If you want to follow along, here on the outline of the text we have the stages of training in the spirit of enlightenment. Then A, the training based on the 7 cause and effect personal instructions in the lineage descended from the great elder Atisha. Okay? 1, developing certainty about the order of the stages. Okay? Then 1, showing that the root of the Mahayana path is compassion. Then we have the importance of compassion in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end. Okay? Alright. Yeah. So remember, compassion is the wish that others be free from suffering. Right? But great compassion in the Mahayana context is the one that takes personal responsibility to free them from suffering. Okay? So I'm going to read from the Lamrim Chenmo and then discuss a few points. Okay? Once your mind is moved by great compassion, you will definitely make the commitment to free all living beings from psychic existence. If your compassion is weak, you will not. Therefore, compassion is important in the beginning because feeling responsible to free all beings requires great compassion. And because if you do not take on this responsibility, you are not ranked as a Mahayana practitioner. In this vein, the teachings of Aksayamati Sutra says, furthermore, Shariputra, the great compassion of the Bodhisattvas is inexhaustible. Why? Because it is the prerequisite. Venerable Shariputra, just as the movement of the breath is the prerequisite for the life force of a human being, the great compassion of the Bodhisattvas is the prerequisite for correctly reaching the Mahayana. Okay. Yeah. So, nothing unknown there, right? Okay? Then there's talk of the importance of compassion in the middle. Okay? So there it says, you may develop the spirit of enlightenment at one time and then engage in the Bodhisattva deeds. But when you see that living beings are innumerable and act improperly, and the training is very difficult and limitless, and that you need an immeasurable length of time, you may lose heart and fall into the Hinayana. You with me? This is what we were talking about before, right? However, by accustoming yourself to increasingly greater compassion that is not just a one-time development, you will become less concerned with your own happiness or suffering, and are not discouraged at providing others' welfare. Therefore, you will easily accomplish all the collections. The collections mean the causes to attain enlightenment. Okay? So then, Kamala Shila's first stages of meditation says, because bodhisattvas are motivated by great compassion, they diligently strive to be very helpful to others without considering themselves. Consequently, they engage in accumulating the 2 collections, which is very difficult, tiring, and requires a long period of time. As the seal of engaging in the Developing the Power of Faith Sutra says, one who has great compassion will always take on a life of suffering and will always give up a happy life in order to help all living beings to mature. If bodhisattvas engage like this in something that is extremely difficult to do, they will fully and quickly complete the collections. They will definitely attain this high state of omniscience. Therefore, the sole root of a Buddha's qualities is compassion. So here, there is the story of one of the Buddha's main disciples, Shariputra, who, it is said, actually had entered the Mahayana path, had become a Bodhisattva, but was on, okay, once you enter the Bodhisattva path, there's actually 5 paths, or like 5, I guess, stages you could say. The first is called the path of accumulation. And the path of accumulation in turn has 3 subdivisions, the small, medium, and large. Now, although you've developed Bodhicitta, right, as I was talking about here, when you see that living beings are innumerable and act improperly and so forth, you may lose heart and fall into the Hinayana, right? So at this stage in one's training, one can still abandon Bodhicitta, even though one has developed the full-fledged level of Bodhicitta, right? Okay? So Shariputra, it is said, did this. And the story goes, when he was on the small path of accumulation, he met someone who asked for his hand. Listen, like, cut off your hand and give it to me. Okay? I don't know why, I don't know the backstory, but that was the request. Okay? Right. So, Shariputra is like, okay, great. I'm not going to just give the change. Now I have an opportunity to give something actually dear. But, you know, I'm a Bodhisattva now. I'm cherishing others. I'll do it, even with sacrifice to myself. Right? Cuts off his hand. Gives it to the other person. But, you see, cuts off his right hand and gives it with his left hand. Right? So then the person is like, how dare you try to give something to me with your left hand? Gets angry, storms off, cursing, Shariputra's previous incarnation. Yeah? Right? So, what does Shariputra think? He doesn't get angry, no. But he's just, he maybe had the same face you had on it, I thought. Completely flabbergasted, and is thinking, if sentient beings are like this, how on earth am I going to benefit them? You know? Then said, okay, oh man, I can't do it. Let me sign up for the Hinayana. Let me sign up for that Nirvana. And then falls from the Mahayana, enters the Hinayana path, and, attains personal liberation. So, it's a big risk. You know? Now, Shantideva addresses this very thing, this very problem, in this text later when he talks about the perfection of giving, where at one point on our path, we might actually give up our own body parts. Yeah. But until you're ready, then Shantideva says, don't do that. Don't do something unless you're ready. Because, you see, if you do something which at the time is actually very virtuous, but you later come to regret it, that becomes a big obstacle. Right? There is another story of the great Indian master Deva, who similarly was asked for one of his eyes. And so, gives his eye to someone else, who promptly bashes it. Sorry, bashes it. it's like, oh, you know?
That seems like a bit, sorry for the wrong word, but that seems like a bit sadistic. Ask someone for their money and their passion. So what was the reason for asking for the other? Just for fun?
Who knows? This is sentient beings. Does anything surprise you with what sentient beings do?
Or it could be another bodhisattva or something.
It could be, of course. And so if that does happen to you, don't get angry. Right? Now, so just give me some space. The point is, you see, if you do something like that, and then you come to later regret it, you actually undo the virtue that the original action had. So, therefore, Shantideva, he gives the recommendation. First, start off by giving away vegetables. Right? Start small, start where you are. Then, through training, right, you will come to the point, because everything becomes easier with familiarity. You'll get to the point where giving away your body parts is as easy as giving away vegetables. What do you think? Yes. Through training. Now maybe not this life. You know? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But soon. Okay, anyway. Right? So, the point is, Shantideva is putting it in the context of not to be daunted, not to be overwhelmed by these stories that we hear about the great bodhisattvas, and say, okay, look, we're not bodhisattvas, it's okay, but start your training today with something you can do, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. Okay? So if you're training for a marathon, although a marathon is, 26.2 miles? You start training for a marathon, you don't go running 26.2 miles the first day. Any marathon runners here?
X.
X. Half. Okay, that counts. You got me? Okay. So 3, the importance of compassion at the end. Based on the power of great compassion, Buddhas, even when they reach their goal, do not abide in peace like Hinayana practitioners, but continue to work for the welfare of beings as long as space remains. For without compassion, Buddhas would be like Shravakas. Kamalashila's second stage of meditation says, since the Bhagavan Buddhas are imbued with great compassion, they remain until the end of the realm in which beings dwell, even though they have attained the complete perfection of their own aims. And also, the sole cause of non-abiding nirvana of the Bhagavans is great compassion. Okay? The glorious Chandrakirti taught that just as seeds, water, and ripening are important in the beginning, middle, and end of a harvest, similarly, compassion is important in the beginning, middle, and end of the harvest of Buddhahood. His commentary on the middle way says, compassion alone is regarded as the seed of a conqueror's excellent harvest, water for its development, and as a maturation in a state of long enjoyment. Therefore, at the beginning of his text, I praise compassion. Okay? Very nice. With this powerful idea in view, the Compendium of Teaching Sutra says, Bhagavan, if bodhisattvas should not learn many teachings, Bhagavan, if bodhisattvas grasp and know one teaching, they will have all of the Buddha's teachings in the palm of their hand. What is this one teaching? It is great compassion. Bhagavan, with great compassion, all the Buddha's teachings are in the bodhisattva's palm. For example, wherever the precious wheel of the universal sovereign is, there also is the assembly of his battalions. You guys, the universal sovereign, you guys have that? Likewise, Bhagavan, wherever the Bodhisattva's great compassion is, there all the Buddha's teachings are. For example, Bhagavan, once there is a life force, all the other sensory faculties will exist. Bhagavan, similarly, once great compassion exists, all the other Bodhisattva's qualities will appear. Okay? So once you've become convinced that compassion is the excellent key to the path, through such proof as reason and limitless scriptures, why would you not hold the spirit of enlightenment together with its root, compassion, to be the supreme instruction? The teacher, Shang Na Chung, said, even though I asked for instructions from the great elder Atisha, he said nothing but renounce the world, cultivate the spirit of enlightenment. So you can imagine this, right? Do we do this? Maybe some of us do this. When we ask our teacher, we're asking for, different highest yoga tantra initiations, various esoteric teachings. So this one Tibetan teacher, he was asking for instructions. I bet that's mengak. It's like personal instructions from Atisha. And Atisha said, renounce the world, cultivate the spirit of enlightenment, meditate on Bodhicitta. And he was doing this in a kind of complaining way to his friend. So upon hearing this, Geshe Dromtompa was embarrassed for him and said, you've received the great elder's ultimate instruction. So then Tsongkhapa says, Geshe Dromtompa understood the core of the teachings. Wow. This conviction is very difficult to achieve, so you must seek a stable and certain knowledge by repeatedly clearing away sins, accumulating merit, and reading scriptures such as the Array of Stocks Sutra. Array of Stocks Sutra. Is that the Avatakam Saka? Is it?
Yes, stock is also.
Okay. So is that also translated as the flower ornament scripture? There's one. Is that one of the same? I wonder. Okay. Anyway, something to investigate. The glorious Bodhisattva praise in 150 verses says, only you, O hero, know your precious spirit, the seed of perfect enlightenment, to be the quintessence. No one else can reach this certainty. Okay. Anyway. Tsongkhapa is just, not just, but he's further giving us the advertising, maybe? Advertising about compassion, right? Telling us how important it is. And it's interesting, he is citing the sutras and the authentic Indian shastras here. Okay? See, you have to understand maybe just a small bit about the history, right? And so in Tibet, there was a view that came up, and Tsongkhapa, in this treatise, he refers to it many times. And what the view was, okay, you see, it is said that the Buddhas have a direct and non-conceptual, okay, realization of emptiness. Every single one of their minds, right, the omniscient mind, is a non-conceptual, direct realization of emptiness. Okay? You understand? So, conceptual, do you understand? We have, like, for example, if we think of our home, we're not there, it doesn't appear like the physical sense objects in front of us, but we can, through concept, through a sort of mental image, think of our home, and our home appears to our mind, right? Yes? Okay. So, the Buddha does not have conceptual thought. If the Buddha were here now, even if he thinks of, his home in, where would the Buddha live if he were here today? Anyway, let's say he thinks of Bodh Gaya in Bihar. Okay? It would not be through concept like us, but he would have a direct realization of it. Like that. Okay? Alright. So then, based on that, there was a thought that came that, since the Buddha has abandoned all conceptuality, the way to attain enlightenment is just to rest one's mind in a kind of non-conceptual, non-discursive thought state, a kind of blank slate, not thinking about anything. Okay? And there were, there's a very famous Chinese master, Hashang Mahayan, he was called, right? Who propounded this view, and then he had some people in Tibet kind of adhere to this view. And so here in this last section, I mentioned Kamala Shila. Did you notice? So here in this last section, it referred to Kamala Shila's first stages of meditation and the second stages of meditation. He actually wrote 3 texts called the stages of meditation. Gomrim, right? And so there's, Gomrim Barma and so forth. Okay? Anyway. At one point, the king in Tibet invited Kamala Shila and this Chinese Hashang to Lhasa to debate which approach was the valid one to attain enlightenment. Because, you see, Kamala Shila was one of the great Nalanda scholars, Nalanda University. So they were, study, debate, how do you say? Very conceptual actually, right? Using our minds, using our analysis. Whereas the other approach is just some resting in some natural, unthinking state. So they had a debate in Lhasa, and Kamala Shila won. And because of that, then the more scholastic, how do you say? If I say the word strain, it seems like a disease. Lineage, the more scholastic lineage of Buddhism then kind of won out, right? Nonetheless, still, this other view propounded by Hashang Mahayana persisted a bit in Tibet. And therefore, Tsongkhapa in this treatise, he also, at a few occasions, seeks to criticize this view. Right? And his whole thing is, right, like, see, in order to attain enlightenment, this development of bodhicitta is very clearly stated in all these other authentic sources. And we need to do that by, not just resting in some natural state, but actually cultivating compassion actively. Right? You guys get me? That's a bit of the bigger picture. Why is he spending so much time kind of advertising the benefits? Is to say this is very much needed to be actively cultivated, not just resting in some, non-conceptual state. And Tsongkhapa, in citing these other sutras and Indian treatises, he's saying, look, I'm not making this up. This is, the Buddha, Nagarjuna, Kamalashila, made in India, right? What does Modi say? Make in India? Make in India, right? So when Modi, then he studies Lamrim Chenmo, he'll very much agree with this way to develop bodhicitta. What do you think? Okay.
I have a question here, please. Can I ask?
Spashni, hi. Yes, you may ask.
Now, according to Buddhist tradition, you say that Buddha is not a god, not a divine being, but the word Bhagwan refers to a divine presence. So, and throughout quite a few of the texts, including the Heart Sutra, the word Bhagwan is used.
Okay. So, did I hear a question?
Yeah, the question was
What influence?
yeah, you didn't ask the question in terms of what.
No, I asked him the question. I said, since the Buddhists believe that he is not a god, not a divine being, but he is somebody who has worked his way up to become the Buddha. Why is he referred to as Bhagwan?
Why is
Because
it
it's a Sanskrit term
Yeah.
which means the divine or the god, who has certain attributes to him, whether it's Vishnu or whether it is Shiva or whatever.
Okay. So, I see you in the back, sir. So, one thing, Subhashini, was it Shakespeare? A rose by any other name, huh? Would still smell sweet. Okay. So one thing is, one can use the same word in different contexts, and it have different connotations, right? So, I'll give you an example. Here in this lovely country, right? If I go to say, if I go to meet Nishita's father, I could call him uncle, right? Yes? Now, and that's a valid way of addressing an elder man, right?
Yes.
Now, does that then mean he is my father or mother's brother?
No, because we have a classificatory system.
Nice.
Mother's brother is called Mama and father's brother is called something else.
Yes. Okay. Right, but you get my point, right? So, you see, how the Tibetans have glossed Bhagavan, right? Chom Den De, right? So you'll see it in our translation as Chom is destroy, Den is possess, De is like gone beyond, right? So they say the endowed, transcendent destroyer is an epithet for the Buddha. But they're taking it kind of, just stripped out, and they just mean the one who is endowed with all good qualities, transcending both samsara and nirvana, and has destroyed all the obscurations, all the obstacles to liberation and enlightenment. Now, actually, to us, the qualities of the Buddha are completely inconceivable. Okay? We have no idea. Right? So when we say that the Buddha is not a god, right, it's a kind of little bit technical, right? So, actually the actual qualities of the Buddha, it is probably surpassing, even if we consider what God would be like, it's more than that, right? But here, we're in the scholastic tradition from Nalanda. So when we classify things, we have to do it in a very precise, exact way. So therefore we have this, these caveats. Well, it's actually not a God because this, But for you, probably what appears to your mind when you think of God, then if you think, oh, if Buddha's not a God, you're somehow diminishing. No, it's not diminishing. So, but anyway, the objects of words are not inherently the inherent referent, of the sounds which express them. You understand? Yeah. So that's even not the highest view, but it's there, right? So anyway, I don't want to get into it too much. I wonder if I said that to you before, Sebastian.
I've never asked you this question.
Anyway. Okay, so we're on. Oh, sorry, sir. Did you in the back have a question? Go ahead.
So which is the best way of meditation to reach God or to realize God or gives that kind of happiness?
It's a difficult question because it depends on you, each one of you, where you're at, right? depending on your previous background, your state of mind, your level of mental development and so forth, certain trainings or meditations could be better or worse. It's like asking the question, what is the best medicine? Right? Best medicine? Huh? You have to say, well, what is the illness that the person is having? Do they have any other allergies or whatever, contraindications, as they say? And then and only then can you come up with the right sort of prescription, right? So what we do here, and I don't think I've seen you here before, right?
First time.
Okay, welcome. But we go through a lot of different meditations, a lot of different kinds, because what they all have in common, if we're doing them properly, they serve as antidotes to our afflictive emotions, our negative emotions, or they serve to increase our positive ones, right? So we need a variety of tools and techniques to subdue our mind, subdue the negative aspects of it, and we need other tools and techniques to increase the positive qualities or cultivate them. So probably for the average person here, we'll have to do 3 or 4 different types of meditation every day. Right? Yeah. Right? How's my half marathon runner, right? You do the cardio, right? You also got to do the weights for strength, right? You got to do the sprinting for the anaerobic. You got to do, then you can mix in some high intensity interval training. You with me?
Yes.
All right. So like that. And don't forget the stretching, right? The mobility work, right? Then and only then, okay, now we're talking about a full program integrated for our health. And by the way, don't forget diet. Okay? So in a similar way, we need to have a very integrated approach to our, our Dharma development. Now, that said, what we've been doing, the meditation that we've been doing thus far this weekend, and what I normally do here, is a very simple mindfulness of the breath meditation, which helps to bring us some mental stability and calmness, right? Which is, at least the instructions are not so complicated that we can do it. Maybe the first time we're told the instructions, we can do it that session. Whereas some other meditations that we'll get into, they're quite complex. And so I'd like to encourage people to use that as a basis for their meditation practice. Right? I like to also call it the vanilla ice cream of meditation. Right? You with me? No frills, no frills, but very standard. Right? And good. Actually, I give, I like ice cream. Okay? When in doubt, actually, if you go to a ice cream parlor you've never been to before, okay? The vanilla is good. It's like you almost can't go wrong with vanilla. I'll go out on a limb on this, right? If you start to get into the strawberry, I had some strawberry, not very nice. Have you? You See? So, when in doubt, you go for vanilla. What do you think is a strategy? Does no one here have ice cream? Okay. Are you with me on that?
Yeah.
All right. That's my hypothesis. When in doubt, go for vanilla. Even the chocolate, sometimes it's like they've used some artificial thing. It's not nice. Okay? Now, you go to good ice cream place, okay, then you can venture out. But when in doubt, go for vanilla. That, if you've learned nothing else this weekend. Okay. So, yeah. Then, slowly, we learn about different kinds of meditation and we integrate them into our practice, right? It's like putting the chocolate sprinkles and sauce. Okay, we'll stop talking about ice cream. Okay, so let's see. Sadhana, I see you making some movements over there. Is it time for a break?
No, not yet. You could call a break. I mean, it's up to you.
No, we. You gotta earn your break. Gotta earn your break. Let's go till 4:30. Okay. Okay. So now we're at the 7-point cause and effect instructions. Okay. They are recognizing that all sentient beings have been our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and then they call it affectionate love, compassion, the extraordinary aspiration, and the 7th is Bodhicitta. Okay? So now, where we are in the outlines is how the 6 other personal instructions are either causes or effects of compassion. Okay? So the first 4, the recognition of all sentient beings as being our mothers, through the development of love, or they call it, Yeong Jamba. It's like affectionate love. Act as causes of compassion. You with me? Okay. So in general, if you repeatedly consider the suffering of living beings, you of course develop a simple desire to free them from suffering. However, to develop this attitude easily, strongly, and firmly, you must first cherish these beings and have affection for them. For, at present you cannot bear for your friends to suffer, you are pleased when your enemies suffer, and you are indifferent to the sufferings of persons toward whom you have neutral feelings, who are neither enemy nor friends. You understand? So again, as I was saying, this technique, what we're going to be doing is raising our level of concern toward others, right? How we do that is we're going to use this recognition that all sentient beings have been our mother, because our mother in general is the one toward whom we can most easily develop kind of feelings of concern, right? So then extending that, well, just like our mother of this life, you know, then our last life, we had one, the life before, So we gradually consider all sentient beings have been our mother. Then we think of how they treat us with kindness and so forth. Then we gradually come to hold all sentient beings with the same level of concern as we do our mother in this present life, right? Then, inasmuch as, you know, we have that level of concern for others, that's how much we care whether they're suffering. That's how much we're invested in them to be happy, right? So, at present, right, those very few beings that we, you know, hold close and dear to us, when they suffer, it matters a lot, right? Then if we have enemies, right, then not only do we not really care if they're suffering, we could actually be happy when they suffer. It's theoretically possible, right? But for the vast majority of beings, we don't care either way or another. Yes? Yes, Nishita?
When you were saying about compassion like to our immediate circle and the neutral circle and the enemies, what came to my mind is, see, how the contemporary world labels a person as being hypersensitive. So I'm trying to see it in the context because, you see, having concern and being sensitive for others, after a point of time, it affects a person so much that, like for me, I don't know what to do with it. To be affected by everything also takes a toll on me. So, how do I touch that part?
You go to a Himalayan cave, you put a boulder in front of it until you become a bodhisattva.
No.
Huh?
No. My question comes from a place in which when you speak of having concern for others, without the distinction of self, the neutral and the enemy, I'm trying to understand it from the framework of being sensitive / hypersensitive, but also not to shut out the work.
Yeah.
To cope with the work.
Yeah. So
that's what I'm trying to figure out when you say somebody's like going back to Hinayana path. So I'm
Right.
trying to translate, is like me shutting out the world is the effective way to handle it all? Or what?
No. Don't. Okay, remember. It's a gradual training. That we need to continue and sustain for a long period of time. Okay? Now, we have to remain balanced so that we don't have what is called like compassion burnout, right? So we need to be able to, how do you say, compartmentalize to a certain extent.
So it's needed then.
Well, but as a sort of, within the context that we realize our own personal limitations, right? Then to say, okay, I can only do this much for my own kind of well-being, sanity, and continuation of the practice. So, I will do that much. But then, anything more is actually not beneficial for myself or others. So, I'm going to set limits, right? Like, you see this a lot in the healthcare world, right? Where a lot of doctors, nurses, and so forth, they burn out, right? And they might have 16-hour shifts or 36-hour shifts, So one could say, see, this is what I was saying. You can even go to sleep with a mind of bodhicitta, right? By knowing your limitations and saying, okay, in general, I want to, let's say you work as a nurse, right? I want to cure everyone from their ailments. Great. Okay? But then, if you just work 24 hours a day, maybe after 3 days you collapse, right? So you have to maintain some balance. Then, you can still say, I want to, heal everyone, and then, you go home after a day of work and someone say, hey, what happened? I thought you said you wanted to heal everyone. It doesn't have to be contradictory, right? So this is the thing. You know your own mind, right? And so we need to, we look to these great treatises to get the kind of the big picture, the overarching, kind of aspiration and direction of our lives. But in the actual day-to-day, we need to use our own wisdom to determine what we do, right? On a day-to-day, interaction-to-interaction basis, right? Because, okay, we're trying to live our lives of bodhicitta, but this person that we then meet, what do we do to actually interact with them in the best way that's in tune with our overarching bodhicitta or aspiring bodhicitta motivation? That's difficult. And, a lot of times I feel very, well, it becomes very obvious to me I'm not enlightened, because we want to have that very prescriptive, like a rule book. Okay, in this situation I always do this. It's not that way. You have to use your wisdom and assess what's going on in that situation. And sometimes also be a little bit, what's the right word? Not just gentle, but realistic, that at our current level of development, there's only so much we can do.
So it's alright to it's alright to set certain limits then.
A realistic assessment of oneself.
I'm sorry, I asked the question to...
Okay. Yeah, of course. There's even this, we'll get to it later, where it's talking about the perfection of generosity, of giving. Then, at one point, if we can't give, there's something where you say sorry. Okay, great. Right. This is in the perfection of giving. Okay? So what to do if you're unable to give. Okay? So this is just a preview. It'll give you an idea of how you can then apply in your life, right? So if you're overcome with stinginess when someone asks you for something, think as follows. This material thing and I are definitely going to be parted at death. It will leave me, and I will leave it. So, I might as well take pleasure in giving this thing away and put it to good use. Making a separation now, just as we would at the time of death. If I give this away, I will not have attachment to my wealth when the time comes for me to die. And I have no regrets, and will give rise to feelings of pleasure and joy. Okay? Can we do that?
No.
So, If you are unable to give away, even though you reflect in this way, okay, so this is what I'm saying, right? Stinginess will come up. Then, for some people, reflecting in that way, that could help and say, okay, I'm going to be separated, can't take it. Then, maybe we can give. But if we can't, then inform the person who asks for it by means of the 3 things that they should know. I love this. This is described in the Questions of Householder Urga Sutra, which states that you should say, I am new to the practice of the Mahayana, and I am still a person of small ability whose roots of virtue are not yet ripened. Also, I am under the influence of an ungenerous attitude. Further, I have strong grasping to a view of the self, and constantly conceive of a self and that which belongs to the self. So, excellent person, please forgive me and do not make it difficult for me. I shall try to do just what satisfies your thoughts and the thoughts of all living beings.
Yeah, that was very reciprocal.
Thank you so much. That answered my question.
Can I add something?
Okay, just hold on. Okay. So then it also says in the Compendium of the Perfections, if you cannot give because your ability is so small, though people come and ask you for something, so as to not make them feel low, comfort them with gentle speech. Henceforth, when people come to ask for something, do your best not to make them feel low and despairing, and clear away the faults of stinginess. Earnestly strive to eliminate craving. Okay, so I think this, is giving us sort of it's not a get out of jail free card, whereby we then just say, "Oh, I'm stingy. That's just me. How I am. Sorry," and then we don't do anything about it, right? But we recognize our limitations, but we then strive to, improve, right? You had something? Yeah.
I was wondering while you were reading the text about the compassion aspect of it. Why is it not explicit that the compassion, some of it we owe to ourselves as well? And I think what she was referring to is getting exhausted and feeling very tired if you just do it for others. It shouldn't be only about me, it shouldn't be only about you, it should be for us. Something like that.
That also is true, right? I mean, I mean,
But that's a good point of view, but that's not my intention.
whether or not she meant that, right? Then that also is something we need to consider, because that's the other thing, right? We are still a sentient being, right? So to have compassion to all sentient beings, we do also have to have compassion for ourselves. Now, nonetheless, there's that balance to be had here, right? In general, we have such a strong preoccupation and self-cherishing mind that many of us aren't in very much risk of totally neglecting ourselves. Many of us. Now, some of us maybe could, and then there's the other end of the spectrum where there's that kind of, self-loathing and very, very low, self-esteem. I'm not worthy. I'm such a, not worthy of whatever, love. These the other end of the spectrum, right? So again, we need to use our own internal wisdom, right? Whereby, even later in the perfection of enthusiastic effort, part of that is knowing when to take a break, right? To avoid burnout. Okay. Again, it's a balance. So, yeah. Okay. So as to not get burned out in this session, we also need to take breaks from time to time. And now is one of those times. So sadhana is very much practicing the perfection of giving away edibles, consumables. And so let us, with bodhicitta motivation, allow her to practice generosity in relation to us by eating, what is that? What is that?
Cookies.
Cookies.